Welcome to the first episode of Beyond the Swatch, a new podcast series from Cottonworks by Cotton Incorporated, where we discuss everything fashion, fabric, and of course, cotton. If you're watching, thank you for being here. I'm your host, Catherine, manager of fashion and digital design for Cotton Incorporated. My background's in fashion, and over the years, I've become a bit of a fashion nerd. I specialize in digital materials creation and virtual apparel, and I also look for new opportunities in cotton in the digital marketing space. If you don't know us, if you don't know Cotton Incorporated, our mission is to help professionals at every level access the knowledge and resources they need to stay ahead in our fast-moving industry and to create outstanding cotton products. We do that through research, with product innovation, industry outreach, and through education. One of the main ways we offer resources to the industry is through the Cottonworks website, where we have deep dive webinars, hands-on training at in-person workshops, and we deliver all kinds of expert insight that can help your company solve problems, upskill your team, and discover what's possible with cotton. Our goal with this podcast is to make those insights even more accessible. So if you are a designer, a product developer, if you're in sourcing or merchandising or retail, marketing, or just someone who loves textiles and fashion like we do, then we're here to connect you with the tools, the ideas, and the people who move the industry forward. We have two of those people here with us today, my fantastic colleagues, Linda DeFranco and Yvonne Johnson. Linda, could we start with an introduction of you?
Sure. Thank you. Hi, I'm Linda DeFranco. I am the director of the trend forecasting department at Cotton Incorporated. I've been with Cotton for 25 years, so I have a little bit of experience in the field. And what a trend forecaster does is we scour the world looking for the latest and greatest in lifestyle trends, colors, and fabrics. And then we compile that information in the form of a presentation, and we bring it to our clients. And we disseminate the information and especially concentrate on the latest and greatest things in cotton.
Thank you. Let's hear from Yvonne.
Hello, my name is Yvonne Johnson. I'm the Senior Director of Product Development at Cotton Incorporated. I'm based in Cary, North Carolina, where the headquarters are. And you could call me a textile nerd. I've been working for Cotton Incorporated for 18 years, and I really love cotton. I'm just not making that up. But we have a rapid prototyping lab at our headquarters where we have weaving equipment, knitting equipment. We're constantly innovating, experimenting to come up with new ideas in cotton fabrics. And we've brought a lot here today that we're going to share with you to just show you all the ways that cotton can be.
For today's episode, we've put together some groups of fabrics for us to look at, for us to talk about, alongside trend insights for the coming season. We've got some virtual fashion inspiration and a technical perspective on what makes these fabrics so special, so relevant, and so valuable for brands and customers. So we've got four big groups of fabrics to show today. First, we're going to look at some updated summer classics in wovens and knits. And then we're going to look at some winter cottons and some really interesting novelty constructions. And then we're going to move into some vintage washdown effects with some really unique finishing techniques. And we're going to finish up with an amazing collection of mineral dyed fabrics. So some of these fabrics are inspirational developments that were made at Cotton Incorporated. And they're ready to be taken to your sourcing team or manufacturers to be put into development. And others are sourced from mills, so they're more readily sourceable. Linked below also, we have a fabric guide for the episode. So if you want to learn more about any of the things we're going to be looking at, you can follow along there. So our first group is about updated summer classics. It's about thinking differently about familiar favorites. So Linda, could you start us off looking at kind of what we're seeing in the market? How are these classic cotton staples being updated for the new season?
Sure. As you ladies notice, it's getting warm out. And as soon as the weather gets a little bit warmer, people are ready to dive into something that says summer. And what says summer more than a striped pattern? You could do it in so many different ways. It could be more traditional, or it could be a little bit more creative. And we've been seeing so many amazing things on the runway. You're going to be kind of shocked with how designers are working with them. In our first slide here, as you can see, the ladies on the right are looking incredible with their striped outfits. I mean, how amazing do they look? I love the head to toe, both pieces. It's a very simple stripe, but the color is popping. They also use the fabric as an applique on the skirt, which is just a really cool idea to use extra fabric if you actually have it. On the left-hand side, I'm loving this because this can kind of morph into something casual. You can throw sneakers on with it, or you can throw some heels on, or you can wear it with sandals. And the whole look can kind of transform based on what you're doing. And I just love a complete set, makes things easy. Now here the designer has done something kind of avant-garde with the stripe. This is a very basic stripe pattern, but I love how they just got so creative with it. And you can see on the left-hand side that really what the designer did, and I think, Kate, you mentioned this, like it looks like it's like the back of the shirt's the front, and the stripe going in just different directions to kind of give it that unique distinction. And on the right, different designer, same kind of fabric. You're seeing a lot of detail on the cuff and the collar and kind of doing some contrast fabric for that. I love this. This is a little bit more some basic stripes, a little bit more youthful. On the left, what's nice about this is that you're utilizing different weights of fabric. So the top layer fabric is probably like a lawn maybe it's a batiste, but it's a very light fabric that's striped. And when it's layered over the outfit, you're getting this like plaid effect. So you're playing with the linear dimension.
That translucence is really interesting.
Yeah. And on the right, we're trying to figure this one out. So the designer either has a shirt tied around the waist in the same fabric, or it could be part of the actual garment. And I like how this dress could be a dress, or it could be worn as a tunic or a top with jeans as we see it on the runway.
So let's look at some fabrics now. What do we have first? Some bold, basic stripes, right?
Well, this group here, we were really just attracted to the color. The colors are so bold and so confident. We kind of thought of what could we put these fabrics in, and you were thinking like a dress, maybe.
Yeah, women's shirt dresses
or a
is what I
tunic.
see. Yeah,
But actually, this one we put into a men's shirt, and the design is kind of cool because it's simple, but it's kind of elevated a little bit. It has a little bit of a cropped silhouette and larger sleeves, but the real star is the color here. This like really bold stripe.
that was a 3D garment that you did, right?
Yeah, that's how we showed it as this kind of key product and key fabric for what's current.
And this one here, we really see it being used in sort of a retro kind of vibe. It's very nostalgic. It feels like something from the 60s or 70s that maybe you pulled out of your dad's closet.
Not my dad's closet.
Your dad's a lot cooler than my dad then. And this is probably just a little bit more classic.
Yeah, I'm really leaning towards the classic, just really indigo chambray. It's ubiquitous. It's seamless, but the weight is nice. And then contrast with a really nice texture of a twill and the white ticking stripe.
Gorgeous. And then with this group, we're adding a little bit more texture here. So what kind of fabrics do we have there?
Well, we'll start with just a little history lesson with seersucker. I'm sure some of you, did your father have a seersucker suit?
We're from the north.
But anyway, so seersucker was developed a long, long time ago, and it's one of the original fabrics that was developed for summer. Because of the construction, there's a lot fewer touch points against the skin, so that means that there's going to be more air flowing through, and it's going to feel cooler and more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so that's the seersucker. The traditional seersucker suit was like pink and white, blue and white, and it was really thin stripes. So this is a really nice soft take, much more modern in this kind of peach coloration and the solid. And then again, this nod towards indigo in this chambray seersucker. Again, this would be great for dresses, be great for menswear as well. But you've really got something really interesting here.
Yes, I love this fabric collection. It is reminiscent of a seersucker. It's puckered, a little bit wider section of texture. What I do like, that it's actually not obviously a real traditional seersucker. The stripes are printed on, and they have this like really organic kind of wavy shape. So not so linear. It almost looks like abstract art in a way. So I could see this being used in a really cool dress for women's wear, men's tops. Kind of different variations like that.
So as we look at knitwear for spring and summer, it looks like pointelle constructions have been getting a lot of attention. So how is that showing up in the market?
They certainly have pointelles and also other kind of lighter weight knits, but specifically pointelles. Here I have 4 different variations on some lighter weight knits, mostly pointelles, except for one of them. The top left fabric is more of a traditional pointelle with a little bit of a nautical feel to it, so something that we're kind of always looking for. To the right of that, we have more of a geometric take on the pointelle fabric and a beautiful cardigan and some fabric we found at the fabric store. And just below that on the right, this looks very high-end to me. It's beautiful. I could see this being made into a dress or something like that. It's very sculptural. And to the left of that, we just love this fabric. It's obviously not a pointelle. It's a lightweight knit lace, and it's just perfect for summer, for layering or doing something fun in that market.
A lot of breathability.
Yes.
A lot of air permeability.
And here we see 3 great examples of pointelle being used on the runway. These gentlemen look phenomenal. On the left, we have the model is actually incorporating trends from our first story, the stripe. So he gets an A+. And on the right, I love how it's layered because these are lighter weight silhouettes. So not everybody might not be comfortable wearing such a lightweight knit, but I love how he has a cotton crew neck under the pointelle cardigan. And moving on, we just have some great variations on how you can use this fabric. I mean, there are so many different end uses. A lot of people think it's very feminine or it could be a little juvenile. But on the left, you can see how, this is a very, very geometric style, but you can see how high-end it looks, like it's very dressy. And in the middle, it's totally the opposite. The fabric itself, if you look closely at the fabric, it's pretty typical pointelle, a little bit on the feminine side. However, the way that the silhouette is made, where it's cropped and how she styled it, it's obviously super edgy. And to the right, a little bit more traditional and this beautiful sweater, and that charcoal gray is kind of a really hot color coming up. And here, these are just some lightweight knits. We just loved showcasing them in these long dresses. The one on the left looks like a little bit more of a jersey fabrication, but I love the simplicity behind it and almost this sort of kind of Grecian fold at the waist. And on the right, incorporating a little bit of an ombre effect in this fabric.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Let's look at the fabrics we have.
Okay, yeah, we got a combination of fabrics here. Let's start out with some of the Cotton Incorporated fabric developments. Some pointelles here. And so I'm just going to move this a little bit closer. It's 100% cotton. It's got a really nice organic kind of abstract design, but it's got a pointelle knit. It's also on the bottom has a knitted in waistline, which is really neat, a waist. And then again, it's just really nice for summer because of the air, just the breathability, the air permeability. But the nice thing is you can do different weights. If you want it to be for, say, a sweater, or it's going to be like a lightweight Henley tank top, it's very, very versatile. And here in more of a really, more of a directional colorway in this kind of deep brown, but a geometric type of pointelle construction.
And we also made that into a really cool silhouette.
Oh, nice.
Let's take a look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of silhouette is it?
So we wanted to go with that sort of long Grecian, almost inspired dress silhouette as another key item.
Very nice. Very nice.
And here's a fabric that I really like, kind of incorporating 2 trends for the season, which is this petal pink color, which is really hot right now. And also, the way it's constructed, it has a real athletic feel. It almost looks like a mesh. And we actually decided to use this in one of our digital silhouettes, and it actually looks great for menswear on this short sleeve version that we have over here.
So now we're going to look at cotton for the fall and winter. So let's start on the woven side. So Linda, what's the big story that you have to show us for the runway?
Okay. Well, who doesn't love a good corduroy?
I love a good corduroy.
I know. And you are going to be shocked with how creative people, much like the stripe, how people are getting so creative. Designers are utilizing cotton corduroy in so many unique and beautiful ways. The first way, as we see, is very high end. These gentlemen look amazing. They have their cotton corduroy suiting on. I love on the left-hand side that plum color of the corduroy. It's just so rich and beautiful. And then on the right, we have a whole complete corduroy look, which is amazing. Here we're seeing suiting again, but in a much more relaxed way. More everyday, maybe wear it to the office, maybe wear it on the weekend. Again, what I do love about this also is the color selection. You have your typical tan, but then you have your green, you have almost like a periwinkle color. And we're taking vintage inspiration here as well. A little bit of a 70s vibe on some of these silhouettes.
It was definitely a big thing in the 70s, but what goes around comes around, right?
It's not the first fabric I think of when I think modern or dressy.
It could be all those things, and that's what we're seeing. And how about outerwear? Look at these guys here. I love the variation. The lady on the left is utilizing this corduroy, and the look is very kind of Victorian almost, like a little bit romantic. And on the right-hand side, we're seeing a bigger whale corduroy and using that in a beautiful outerwear piece. Look at this, ladies. I mean, this is the piece de resistance, as they say. This gorgeous corduroy dress. Look at the sleeves. It's dramatic. It's beautiful. And like I said, we're using it every which way.
I think the cotton satin on the bottom is really pretty as well. It's very unexpected.
So let's look at the fabrics that we've brought here. Yvonne, can you talk a little bit about how these corduroys have been modernized and like how the structure of the fabric itself can contribute to that warmth and comfort?
Absolutely. And this is another one, and shame on me for not knowing the year. However, it was developed hundreds of years ago, and it moved in different time frames. It was super like elegant aristocracy, and then it moved into being more like workwear, and then it developed into a fashion thing. Think about in the 70s, all the hip hugger cords, and now you can find cords everywhere. But I just think it's an excellent winter fabric because of the pile, and the way it's woven is very unique, very special piece of equipment that it's done on. But just because of that raised pile surface, that's what lends that warmth to it. But let's look at some of these fabrics that we have here. We've got about 3 different groupings, and we're going to look at this just really vibrant color first, Linda.
I love this color.
Yeah, so just this one, just again more, it's a little bit of a wider wale. And that's when I talk about, just these vertical lines. It's called wales. And you can go from a very, very fine pinpoint wale all the way to something really, really thick that we'll show you in a second. But this sheen is something that's really beautiful and ubiquitous of a corduroy. So we've got that one, but then look at this one, going a little bit wider wale in this case. Put this little guy out of the way. But here, this is kind of one when we're looking at, we're showing some really beautiful fabrics, but also want to talk about ways where you can, especially as brands, retailers out here in the audience, looking at this stuff, how can we make this maybe a little bit of a less expensive fabric? So taking a white corduroy, and this is a digital print. So again, it takes shorter yardages, but it was created with this speckle effect. It almost looks like a novelty yarn, but a really nice look with that white contrast coming through. And then going another way is with this matte look. So again, we had that really nice sheen with the corduroy, but in this case, this was a yellow corduroy, and then it was printed just on the wide wales with a matte pigment, and it gives a marbleized effect and a really just different look to it.
I've never seen it like a printed whale like that.
And it really changes the character of it. And then here, really looking at texture. And I think you envisioned a 3D garment out of this one.
That's right. We showed that, I think, for the women's market.
Yes, in a jacket. And as we saw on the runway, this is the perfect option for an outerwear piece. And we love how it's so distinctive and, in a way, dramatic with these wider wales.
The wider wales, but also the frosted effect. And that's going to really speak to some of the trends that we're going to talk about later in this little talk. Next, we have sculpted.
Yes, very geometric motifs, which is kind of interesting, a little bit unexpected.
Yeah, it's like taking the corduroy and then giving it a little bit more interest, textural interest. And these diagonal lines that you see, that was actually etched with laser technology. So that's like one of the more modern technologies typically used for denim. If you think about denim and the whiskers that you can see on denim, usually that's done with brushes and stones and all that kind of thing. But lasers actually can be used to take color away or etch into a fabric. So that was a really interesting way, a really good interpretation of how to utilize lasers. And then here, more of a box effect, more of a grid design. Again, achieved that same way, utilizing lasers. So you're not using a jacquard piece of equipment that would be a whole lot more expensive.
This would be a fabulous suiting fabric for menswear.
Agreed. This one's really interesting,
Yes,
Linda.
this is a Dobby construction, and again, the color selection being really important. I love the baby blue and the contrast with the black yarn, and it was made into a shacket, I believe. And it's a very unusual fabric to pick for that kind of silhouette, but it works so well. And really, the silhouette is kind of simple, and that's good because the fabric is the star.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's start again with what's trending on the runway.
Yes. So, as weather gets colder, who doesn't like to wrap themselves up in something warm and cozy? Everybody wants to buy a new sweater or a new look for the season when things get a little bit cooler. And we're definitely seeing some fun things on the runway. And as you can see, it kind of runs the gamut. So we're seeing a lot of emphasis on different yarn sizes, heathered effects, bulkier yarns, sort of voluminous yarns where the silhouette itself, for example, like the one on the right, is so textural and very imperfect in its own way. On the left, we're really seeing how the yarns are having this sort of heathered effect. It feels very English countryside, or she looks like she's walking through the Scottish moors. And even though it seems like it sounds traditional, look at the gentleman in the middle. You can take these ideas and you can kind of make them edgy and streetwear at the same time as well. And lastly, we love this type of fabric. Everybody sort of gravitates towards this sort of fleecy fabric. What do you guys?
Shearling.
Like a shearling. We see shearling a lot as a trim or a collar effect, especially in outerwear. I love these two examples that we pulled because the one on the left is a very sort of simple silhouette. The jacket is very kind of standard, but totally elevated with that really textured fabric. Now on the right, we're adding just a little bit more elements to it. We're adding a little bit of the leather trim and making the jacket look a little bit more constructed. So these are just great go-to looks for the fall and winter.
Yvonne, I know this is something that your team has been working on for a couple of seasons now. Can you show us some of the ways that you've been winterizing cotton in knits?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really been a great exploration and really successful constructions where you just really look at the yarn, you look at the gauge of the machine you're using. So you use bigger yarns, use fluffy yarns, but these are 100% cotton. There's so many ways to use cotton fiber to turn it into just beautiful, textural, lofty knits. And for instance, here, just looking at working with boucle yarns and a really coarse gauge knit, and it's just got a lot of really nice soft color integration into it.
It's very similar to that runway where it just perfectly imperfect. It just has so many different levels to it.
It's almost like it's kind of like fuzzy. It's almost blurry, like, the television screen at 10 o'clock when everybody's supposed to, 10 o'clock, where are your children? And like for here, in just this little piqué knit, again with the boucle yarn, but again, it's just got so much texture, and it's a really thick knit, but it's surprisingly lightweight. I love your word voluminous. It's voluminous, but it's not heavy.
And the color kind of makes it feel a little bit more dense or saturated, but it actually is so light.
It is. It's really interesting. And then just denim inspiration. This isn't indigo, but it's just a novelty yarn that has a denim look, and really love that bright contrast on the bottom. And I'm pretty sure that we do have a visualization of this one in a 3D garment. And it really looks good with the sleeves, where you have that nice blue, bright blue that is going around on the wrist as well as on the waistband. It really makes it different. But then another way to really get a nice soft fabric, but also just increase the insulative character. Insulation means you're going to be warmer. Less air coming through the fabric is going to make you feel warmer, because and then you're also going to hold that warm air on the inside. But this fabric is really beautiful. It's been brushed, So it's got a really nice felted look. And then the other side, it's got a really nice patterning with the burgundy and the black and the green striping.
It's beautiful. It's very
And
just
it's
rich. It's decadent.
It is decadent looking, but again, it's 100% cotton. And that ombre type of striping is very different.
Beyond being a seasonless essential, cotton has this ability to take on character and to tell visual stories through unique dyes, washes, and finishes. As designers and developers, we're always balancing creativity and responsibility, thinking not just about how something looks, but how the product has been made. It's becoming more and more expected that products deliver not only on aesthetics, but also continuously striving for better processes. So with our last two groups of fabrics, we're going to look at some ways that cotton can do both. Cotton can deliver on the kinds of aesthetics that people want, and some ways that it can do that has a lower impact. So first, we're going to look at the inspiration for this from the trend research. Linda, let's look through what we're seeing on the runway.
Sure. And I think the key with these runway looks is that consumers are not looking for perfection. They want fabrics that have identity to them, that have character. So a lot of these looks are going to be almost like sun faded. The dye is not going to be perfect. There'll be various spots and various saturations on it. And this is all to give the fabric character that maybe over time as you wash it will even develop more character. And, it's almost a little bit like a DIY, if you will. It looks like maybe you did it yourself. And some of the runway that we're seeing is so beautiful and elegant. It's not like that kind of granola, like you left your sweatshirt out and you're going to see what happens. As you notice with our runway on the right, totally sun-faded look, this butter yellow, but it's very modern, elegant as well. And on the left, we have a little bit more of a youthful interpretation with that tunic. But again, the fabric has varying degrees of color on it. And here you can see how the color is used differently on these runway looks where there's different saturations throughout on the silhouette, a little bit lighter at the top and a little bit more saturated at the bottom. And our next look is amazing. I love everything that he's wearing, but especially the sweater. You can really kind of zone in and see how that sweater has a lot of character to it. There's a lot of different lighter yarns coming through. The sleeves are obviously a little bit different, but this is what we're talking about when you think like, okay, this has been left out in the sun and the sun did its work with this silhouette. And here we're seeing a lot of this character in the denim market. So you're seeing different washes and finishes that will highlight different dyeing and finishing techniques. You see a lot of the dye being left in the placket or the waist of a jean. So again, creating a little bit of an individual type of look in these fabrics. I kind of included a few things that we found in the market. These are a collection of knits, and I just love how the different type of constructions of knits takes the dye differently. So the placket on the shirt will be a little bit different color than the actual jersey fabric, and then obviously the waffle will take a little bit different color as well. And lastly, we've included some wovens to showcase this effect as well. We talked about corduroys before. And these aren't as buttoned up. These have a little bit of a vintage feel to them. They look like they've been washed a couple of times. But again, you can see the discoloration, if you will, on certain parts of the fabric. And that pile is the perfect place to kind of have that little contrast as well.
The seams are interesting too in those garments, just that you see that little differential dye uptake in the seams to give it a little bit more visual interest.
It's like it's leaving its history.
Yeah. So there are a number of different ways to achieve these kinds of effects from a technical perspective, right, Yvonne?
True, yes.
Let's look at some of the ways that we've worked with this at Cotton.
Typically, if you're looking at wash down effects, as we say wash down, you maybe heard the terms acid wash, stone wash, things like that. It's been typically done with chlorine bleach or potassium permanganate. So we really worked on finding ways, exploring ways where we could use other types of chemicals or processes that would reduce kind of our footprint, just a little bit less water, energy, and chemicals.
Fantastic.
So typically, most and still used a lot is a chlorine bleach or potassium permanganate, which I'll show you here. Like for instance, in this corduroy, it's really beautiful. It's really got this kind of this marbleized effect. It's frosted effect, and that's typically done with the chlorine or potassium permanganate. And they might put pumice stones in the machine, or they'll put rags, and it's maybe got a little bit soaked with a little bit of chlorine, and just where it hits the top of the fabric or garment is where it creates this effect. And so that's really traditional. It's still done.
I love
today.
the stretch too for
Yes,
this.
it's got a little
It's
spandex
a great
in it.
women's wear option if you want that in the fabric.
Yes, absolutely. But in this case, I've got a couple to share with you. So that was the typical where you could use chlorine or potassium permanganate. But there are also companies that have come out with other processes. There's a potassium permanganate alternative that's considered a little less, corrosive in a way, where you can get these wash down effects. And basically what you're doing is pulling some of the color off of the fabric. And then, but what's really neat is just have this really beautiful reversible characteristic in this herringbone, non-denim bottom weight.
How amazing would this be in a suit?
I
Also
think it'd be
because
very
it's just the
awesome.
contrast of that traditional pattern with the finishing on it.
It's like taking this elegant suiting fabric and then you've kind of, like
Beaten
you
it up.
said, beaten it up, made it more grunge, but it's really directional. And then this one, again, in this case, again, we used a different type of, not the chlorine, but the alternative, the potassium permanganate alternative, where it just pulled the color off in a really unique and interesting way, in more of like a batik kind of characteristic, but being able to be done at production at scale. But again, look at this beautiful reversible possibility as well. But the raised ridges have a really nice aesthetic. So those are more like kind of the traditional kinds of looks. Another really neat way, and we're going to move on here to some sweater knits, but where we've done something that's called discharge print. So in this case, before the sweater was dyed, and it's a really nice lightweight sweater, this 100% cotton, before it was dyed, it was printed just on the raised where the cables are with a discharge paste. It's something that will prevent dye from coming onto the fabric. So when you dye it, it only dyes down into the valleys. So it gives this beautiful contrast and a really kind of a handmade kind of look. And then also in more of a bulkier knit in this 100% cotton. You were speaking about this gray, how directional the gray is. But again, where it's printed with this discharge paste on top and then dyed. And so of course you can dye it in any color. And then you get this really nice contrast and these highs and lows. It gives it so much dimension.
We loved these so much that we did 2 different visualizations for these fabrics.
Yeah, the one on the left is a little bit more traditional, but it kind of reminds me of that runway I showed you with the brown cable knit, but just utilizing it in this beautiful gray. And the middle silhouette, a more women's wear type of style with a thick rib knit bottom. And on the right, I love the addition of the buttons, like making it a little bit dressier. So you have that like kind of contrast between like high and low within the fabric, but also within the silhouette.
Very wearable.
And then our last little group here, what is the story on
Yes,
these?
I want to talk about this because again, we're always looking for ways to be, again, other options besides say that the typical, the chlorines, want to get away from that or get away from the permanganates, as I mentioned before. And these fabrics are really interesting. We've got a double knit tuck and mesh here. We have a piqué knit, 100% cotton piqué knit, think about polo shirts, that kind of thing. And then an interlock, which is a really nice 100% cotton knit. But you can see the 3 different shades. What we used was ozone technology. So using ozone to pull the color off of the fabric. And so on the bottom, these are the original color. And then when you present the fabric to the ozone, it's in an aqueous solution. That means it's in water. But where it touches the fabric, where the fabric was wet, it pulls the color off. So how long you keep it within the ozone system, it pulls color off more. And so you can really control it and get these really interesting tonal effects.
This was another one that we absolutely adored and made into some really cool silhouettes. And I love how they were styled, like the creativity behind them. The dress, as you can see, it has its own like ombre pattern, the whole dress. It starts off from light to dark, and then quite the opposite on the right, we did from dark to light. And I just love the idea of using these 3 fabrics in that fashion, it's just so creative.
Yeah, I like the way you did that, the way that you, rather than just pick the one and put it into a garment, the way that you integrated all 3 together, and to be able to see that virtually, how it can work, how it can look.
You can visualize a lot of things really quickly when you work with the virtual apparel. So you can choose which one you like the most or how you want them placed in a really quick way rather than physical sampling.
Mm-hmm.
So our last group here, we're going to be looking at this amazing collection of mineral dyed fabrics made by Yvonne's team. So with this increased interest in vintage washdown effects, these like sun-baked, kind of faded, non-uniform looks, there's been some increased interest also in natural dyes, right? And a little bit more openness from the industry to the trade-offs that come along with using natural dyes. Yvonne, can you talk a little bit about what natural dyes are and how they're different from traditional dyes?
Yes, it's interesting you say traditional dyes. So traditionally, if we think about thousands and thousands of years ago,
they were natural.
They were traditional dyes because everything was naturally dyed. Think about marigold flowers, cochineal bug. How you get that purple, that elegant purple came from actually an insect, and avocados, pomegranates, just dandelions, all kinds of things, and so. The natural dyes, so there's not a lot anymore. If you think about it now, spring forward to the modern time. So really see natural dyes as more of something that would be mostly niche, but just does definitely have a place. Dye stuffs, when you say traditional nowadays, they're synthetically derived. So that means they come actually from petroleum-based products. And so what we were just wanting to show here is, again, at Cotton Incorporated in the Research Center, we're trying to look at other options, other innovations, ways you can do things differently, alternatives. And so in this case, we were looking at alternatives to synthetic dyes by using mineral-based dyes. So these are natural dyes derived from minerals. So, minerals that you find out in nature, and then they were transformed into pigments. And then they were pigment dyed in garment form on all this wide range of fabrics that you see here. And you can see the beautiful range of colors. One thing I would say with the mineral dyes versus, say, a natural dye from a plant material, these tend to hold their color a little bit better. The unique characteristic of natural dyes is it does kind of wash down with time, or the color shifts a little bit, but that's kind of like that uniqueness or individuality, you would say.
That's what people were looking for.
Yes. And so I'll just share a few of these with you, and we showed this in a lot of different constructions. So a really nice waffle weave that would be great in jackets, or it would be wonderful also for top of the bed, blankets, that kind of thing, really transfers over to the home market as well. Thinking about French terry constructions here, that's just really nice colorations. And then one thing though with these minerals, they can be recollected. So whatever doesn't get deposited onto the garment or onto the fabric can be collected to be reused. So like beautiful turquoise colorations in pointelle sweaters.
I can't believe the saturation of color you get.
The saturation is really beautiful. And so that's something that we found was very nice and successful with this type of dye stuff in our experimentation and work. And so in a terry knit, which is definitely very popular right now, and then a lightweight woven in this kind of this vertical stripe that's kind of an open effect, and the pointelle as well. Really beautiful for summer.
Right, and we actually put this into a silhouette because we love this so much. This open construction.
This one?
Oh, it's so beautiful. It just works really well. And I love how you have the incorporation in the bottom of the trim, so you can really visualize.
Oh, it's got a really nice pointelle trim.
Yeah, so. This is just something that would be perfect for the spring-summer season.
And then just looking at this more of this earth tone kind of coloration here. Nice canvas weave, and then a lightweight jersey knit. And so just really nice look. It's kind of got, again, kind of a frosted characteristic to it.
And this one we put into a bomber jacket motif, which works really well because that sort of like rugged type of feel works really well with this sort of fabric that looks like it has a lot of character to it. Because the bomber jacket, you want to get character over time.
Absolutely. And then in these peach colorations here, we've got a really nice moleskin, which is a type of a velvet weave, but it's called moleskin, a little bit of a flatter construction. And then also in this bow tie sweater knit as well.
Yeah.
So just a really nice range of color that we were able to achieve.
couldn't help ourselves. We had to put this into a full-on ensemble. You know, I love a complete look, so
Okay,
top
great.
and bottom. And you can see how beautifully that works from the silhouette that Kate made. It's gorgeous. And we also couldn't let this one go. We decided to put this into a knit sweater for women's wear with a zipper.
Mhm.
And just the dimension and the bow tie, if you look closely, there's a bow tie effect on it.
Mhm.
It just gives so much interest. It makes you just want to look a little bit closer and you know it's something special.
I definitely love the texture and the coloration that you can get with these different constructions. I also want to just share with you what we've done with mineral dyed yarns. So again, in this case, we were able to source mineral dyed yarns. So then now we can do jacquards and we can do stripes and all kinds of different designs. So we have a very kind of a rugby stripe here in this sweater knit. And then we have a jacquard, bird's eye back jacquard, this lattice work basket weave kind of look. And then also we did a French terry knit, more like a hoodie type of fabric, but a variation to it.
A very
Kind of has
social
a
hoodie.
a Morse code kind of look on
Yeah.
the face, and then this multicolor stripe on the back.
People love French terry. They always want more
Yes,
of it.
they
And I'm like,
always want
how-
to see something different.
It's just
And then a
boggles my mind.
piqué knit as well with this natural cotton in combination in this variegated stripe.
That's great. I love, and I've said this before, how these natural yarns and the construction of the fabric work so well together. Each highlights the other. So it's just a perfect combination.
Yes.
Wow, there's so much that you can do with, even this sort of relatively narrow range of colors. But there's so much versatility that you can achieve.
Yes.
Thank you for walking us through all of those, Yvonne.
My pleasure.
Wow, we looked at a lot.
You did.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Yvonne, so much for being here.
Absolutely.
For sharing what you're seeing in the research, what you're working on in the lab, and for coming on to share your knowledge today.
It was so fun.
I had a lot of fun too. Thank you.
What I loved about today's conversation is that it shows the huge potential of what cotton can do. It's a fiber that can do so many things, and it can be so much more than just your usual jean, your basic t-shirt, or a hoodie.
It's so versatile. Cotton can be those things if you want them to be, but it could also be so much more. And I think we kind of showed that today. What do you guys think?
I think so. And you can definitely express your individuality and be on trend as well.
So we've got more ideas, more insights, more fabrics, and more episodes coming soon. So be sure to follow along. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider subscribing to the channel. Maybe share it with someone else in the industry. If you'd like to learn more about any of the fabrics that we showed today, click on the link below to access the fabric guide and visit us on cottonworks.com. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.